Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram onkar vidyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, so in the last class, if you all remember, we had discussed the answers given by Sri Krishna to the questions raised by Arjuna. It's very interesting. Before I go ahead and take up the next verse, the very term Krishna, we are studying the teachings of Sri Krishna. The very term Krishna comes from a Sanskrit root called Krish. It has got two meanings. Krish means something which attracts everything towards itself. So Krishna is that reality which attracts everything towards its own self. This is one meaning. Another meaning of this term Krish or Krishna is that Krishna is that reality which uproots, which completely uproots our worldliness or samsaritvam. This is the meaning of Krishna. So we can think about Krishna as an individual, a human form, but what actually it refers to is the supreme reality which is the source of all attraction. All the attractions that we are experiencing in life, it is all owing to the presence of the supreme reality in everyone. That's why everything appears to be attractive. The source of attraction is this supreme reality. Or you can understand Krishna as that reality which uproots. Uprooting, it's very important. Totally uprooting the very seeds of worldly existence. That is what is the meaning of Krishna. Now, why I touched upon this point? The reason is that this is exactly what is happening here. If you just recollect what Arjuna asked and the answers given by Krishna, it is exactly the way to completely uproot the very seeds of worldly existence. Arjuna's question was about all these so-called different individual aspects of this existence. What is this Adhyatma? What is this Adhibhuta? What is this Adhidaiva? What is Adhyaksha? What is karma? As if these things are all different things existing, mutually separated from each other. But is that the case? Krishna's answer makes it very clear that none of these different planes of references exist separated from the supreme reality. That is a vision, beautiful vision. Whether it is Adhyatman, whether it is Adhibhutam, whether it is Adhidaivam or Adhyaksha, or all the activities which we see here, nothing is existing separated from the supreme reality. So the biggest principle here is what? There is no second entity existing apart from Ishvara. This is the point which needs to be driven deep into the human hearts. It is an expectation to bring about a new vision. We have to learn to live with a new vision. It is not just remembering the name of God. That is one thing. Now, how to remember the God's name, or how to remember God, this is actually the art of remembering God, what Krishna is teaching us here. So, the basic point that we need to remember is, there is nothing existing here separated from that supreme reality. There is no second entity here. Presently, we are all strongly rooted in the idea that this is a second entity called world and there is another entity called God. This may be okay in the initial stages. This is how our so-called religious life or spiritual life starts. But as we inquire into it, when we begin to go deeper into this entire phenomenon of what is the supreme reality, things will begin to emerge. The true picture of reality will begin to come out, and then we will see that there is no second entity existing here apart from Ishvara. Now we are touching upon a very big principle here, which is going to be the deciding factor. What is the deciding factor? Deciding factor about how you are going to leave your body at the time of death. It's a very important thing. Those few moments, the last few moments, it determines what is going to be the next. So how do we ensure that in the last few moments we keep our mind in the right place? So it is something which is completely dependent upon what is the kind of vision with which we are leading our day-to-day life. Again, I repeat this point. It completely depends upon the vision with which we are leading our present, this moment, day-to-day life. If our vision is wrong, it is difficult. And if we get the right vision, things become easy. Not only easy, if you just look into the language of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, you can see the definiteness of it, the certitude with which he speaks. It is infallible. Sri Krishna says, there is no doubt, if you do what I say, you will be leaving your body with perfect consciousness of the supreme reality. If you do as I say. That is the language here, so beautiful. So in the last class we have seen, Krishna is giving the answer that whatever is existing, it is all nothing but Ishvara and Ishvara alone. So the questions were, what is Brahman? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adhibhutam? What is Adhidaiva? And what is Adhyaksha? And the last question was, Prayana kale cha katham geyosi niyatatma bhihi. The last question is what is remaining to be answered. So last question which Arjuna asked was, Prayana kale, at the time of leaving this body, katham geyosi, how should we know you, or what is the way of knowing you? Knowing you by whom? Niyatatma bhihi, by those people who have practiced controlling the mind. So these are all very important points. Unless we practice the control of the mind, no magic is going to take place at the last moments. So the last question was, Arjuna is asking, how is that we are going to know you, O Krishna? In the last moment, we who have practiced the control of the mind. And the answer to that question is, what is the next verse? Let's see that. So the question is, how is the supreme reality going to be known at the last moments? Answer is, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. The next three verses, actually, 4 verses, they all deal with the same topic. And they are very important as far as we so-called devotees are concerned, we sadhakas are concerned. we who want to attain that supreme state, we are all aspirants. We are aspiring to come out of this bondage. So we who are aspiring to come out of the state of bondage, for us this is extremely important. It is paramount. This next 3-4 verses, actually this is what is the practice which we have to be doing in our day-to-day life. So Krishna is talking about how to leave this body with the remembrance of Ishvara. Every word is important. Krishna is saying, Antakalecha. Now we can just visualize our final moments. A few more breaths are left. Now what is the state of the mind? A few more breaths are left, but what is the state of the mind? Antakalecha. In the Antakala, in the final moments, what will be our state of the mind? It's very important. No magic is going to take place. It will completely depend upon certain factors. So Krishna says, Antakalecha mameva smaran. Remembering me and me alone. Tyaktva kalevaram. One who gives up the body. I'll just explain. Every word is very, very important here. First of all, the main point here is remembering Ishvara. Remembering. Smaran. Smaran means remembering. Remembrance. Now this remembrance is completely dependent upon one principle or one law or one rule. And this rule is infallible. This rule is unfailing. It cannot go wrong. And what is the rule? The rule is Bhagavat Anusmaranam eva Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. Again, I repeat this point. What is the rule? What is the principle? Bhagavat Anusmaranam Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. What does it mean? Constant remembrance of Ishvara becomes the hetu. It becomes the cause of Bhagavat Prapti. It's a connection. It's a cause and effect. It's a principle of causality. If the cause is there, the effect is going to come. It is unfailing. This cannot fail. That is the language actually. This remembrance of God in the final moment completely depends upon what kind of a life we are leading in our day-to-day life now. So what we are doing now is going to determine what is going to emerge in the final moments. So what is the principle? Principle is that Bhagavat Anusmaranam. Remembering Ishvara. And how this Anusmaranam? It should be Sarvada. At all times. Nairantaryena. Nairantaryena means in an unbroken way. See, it is going to be difficult now. It is going to be difficult. Sarvada Nairantaryena, at all times in an unbroken way, and Adara, with all earnestness, and Bhaktya, with great devotion. You see what a wonderful thing it is. A heart which is saturated with bhakti bhava, with that kind of an antakarana which is full of earnestness, saturated with tremendous devotional mood, and remembering God not momentarily but sarvada at all times, and nairantaryena, in an unbroken way. There is no break in that. This is the perfection in remembrance. I'm just talking about remembrance done perfectly. We are perfect. We are today. We are also trying to remember God always, but we are doing it imperfectly. So the thing to be noted here is that presently we are also trying to remember God, but it is being interrupted by all worldly thoughts. Is it not? Yes, we are all trying to remember God, definitely. We are all bhaktas, we are all seekers of the ultimate reality, and we are all trying to remember God. God, but it is happening in interrupted manner. We remember God, again we forget it. We remember, again we forget it. Again the worldly things come in between. But we are talking about the perfection in remembrance. That perfection in remembrance is this. Sarvada nairantaryena adara bhaktya. At all times, in an unbroken manner, with great earnestness and a mind antakaran which is saturated with tremendous devotion. In this way, when we remember, this Bhagavat Anusmaranam becomes the Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. It becomes the cause of attainment of Ishvara. So this is the principle of remembrance. Means we have to strive to habitually remember. Remembrance, this kind of a remembrance should become a habit with us. A habit is something which you just can't come out of it, is it not? When we become habituated to something, we just can't come out of it. Can we develop this kind of an habit, an habitual remembrance of the Supreme Reality? Now again, how will this kind of a remembrance be possible in an uninterrupted manner? Of course, now that is, Krishna will further, next 3-4 verses going to come repeatedly discuss this point. But let me tell you right in the beginning, this kind of an unbroken kind of a remembrance of Ishvara will become possible only when our vision is completely changed. And what is that new vision? And that new vision is what? There is existing nothing separated from Ishvara. This is the very plank. This right drishti, this right drishti has to come. And this right drishti, it can come only from the Shastras, from no other books. It may sound a bit dogmatic, but it's not a dogma, it is the truth. This vision, which books imparts you with this vision? This vision is imparted to us only by the Upanishads. So the first thing that we need to understand, as the Ishavasya Upanishad says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam. First do this thing, cover everything with Isha, Ishvara. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Whatever is that we are experiencing here, the first thing is to change your drishti. The idea that a second entity apart from Ishvara is existing is completely rooted in avidya. First bring this vidya drishti, Shastra drishti, which says that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara. This is the first transformation in our way of looking at things which should come about. When this happens, now just tell me, if you are completely convinced that whether it is Adhyatma, whether it is Adhibhuta, whether it is Adhidaiva, whether it is Adhyakya, whether it is Karma, whatever is existing here, it is all Ishvara and Ishvara alone. Now tell me, can there be forgetfulness of Ishvara? It is a transformation of the vision. With this vision, when you are leading your life, you are naturally, effortlessly, the remembrance of the Supreme Reality remains with you. You breathe and you live in that. Again, I repeat, this is a very, very practical and experiential development which is waiting to happen in every person's life. I'm talking about this an experiential and practical development which is waiting to happen. The transformation of the vision, and based upon the new vision which comes from the Shastras, the constant awareness of Ishvara becomes natural. That is why Krishna in the beginning, he is first giving this great vision to Arjuna that nothing is existing apart from Ishvara, whether it is Adhibhutam, whether it is Adhyatmam, or Adhidaivam, or Adhyakyam, or Karma, nothing is existing apart from Ishvara. With this vision, you will be successful in constantly being aware of that great reality which is Ishvara. So, this is the principle of remembrance which I wanted to focus upon. Remembering. This remembrance completely stands on the principle of what we do now. Bhagavat Anusmaranam Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. When we constantly remember Ishvara now in our day-to-day life, that Bhagavat Prapti towards the end of the life becomes 100% possible. Second point. Sri Krishna says, Mameva Smaran. Smaran means remembering. Remembering whom? Mameva. This is a very important point. Mameva means me alone. You are not, if you want to attain me, you have to remember me and me alone. There cannot be anything else possible. Now, what does Krishna refer to, me alone? Krishna is saying that remembrance of that limitless, infinite reality. Mameva refers to that infinite reality. Why I am talking about this, remembering this infinity? Mind can either remember the infinity and totality, or it may remember particular things, those things which are limited. Mind can either remember limited things, or it can remember the unlimited, infinite, the totality of reality. These are the two possibilities. So Krishna says, you should not be remembering anything particular or limited. Anything which is limited is perishable. These are the great principles. Anything which is limited is perishable, it is destructible, and it becomes the cause of bondage. Whereas remembrance of the unlimited, infinite, becomes the cause of liberation. So remembering me alone means remembering the infinite alone, not remembering any particular. Now, why I am further focusing upon this point? Because this is where we all are trapped. If you just look into our present day-to-day life, you will see that we are constantly in our day-to-day life deeply engrossed or attached to individuals and limited things. Is this not the fact? Our attachment is for this person, that person. This deep engrossment word is very important. This profound engrossment with limited things. My husband, my wife, my children, my this, my that. This is our present state where the mind is completely engrossed in the limited. Now, if we just go by that principle which I spoke about, Bhagavat Anusmaranam Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. Constantly remembering the infinite becomes the cause of the attainment of the infinite. Similarly, the same principle can be applicable in another way. Samsara Vishaya Anusmaranam becomes the Sansara Prapti Hetu. This needs to be noted down. Similarly, this law, this principle is what? Samsara Vishaya Anusmaranam, continuously being engrossed with different Vishayas of the samsara. Vishayas doesn't mean just objects, human beings. Attachment for this person and that person. When we are leading this kind of a life, completely engrossed with, in and through, the disease of attachment for limited things, that becomes the cause of the attainment of the limited state, means bondage. Samsara Vishaya Anusmaranam will become Samsara Prapti Hetu. So the principle is so very clear. What Krishna is placing before us is a very big law, a principle. The principle of what you're remembering. If you remember the infinite, you get the infinite. If you remember only the limited, you get the limited. And when you get the limited, we are bound. This is the principle of remembrance. So now, that's why Krishna says, what is that we have to constantly remember in our day-to-day life? We should be constantly remembering the infinite and infinite alone, not the individuals. Our attachment for this person and that person, how much of a sweet that relationship may be, it's a trap. My this, my that, Amar chele, amar me. Now, this engrossment, please don't mind, of course, it's the basic facts of life. Now, we are talking about the attainment of the supreme reality, then this is the principle. Unless we lead this kind of a life, life in which you are constantly practicing the remembrance of the infinite and the unlimited, that attainment of the unlimited is not going to happen during the last moments of life. So both these words are extremely important. Mameva smaran, remembering me alone. The remembrance, the principle of remembrance we have seen. What you remember, that you get. So if you are remembering the infinite, you attain the infinite. If you are habituated to remember only the limited things, this human being, that human being, constantly the forms of human beings are dominating your awareness. If that is happening, even in the last moment, it is the form of the limited which will dominate your awareness. And you attain that limited state. This is the principle. That's why Krishna says, Mameva, you remember me alone. Me means the infinite, not the limited. Mameva. There's a saying, the God is a jealous God. God doesn't want that the jiva should love anybody else. It's a saying like that. Unless we give our whole and everything to Ishvara and Ishvara alone, attainment of Ishvara is not going to be possible. Not even a bit. If we just see Sri Ramakrishna's, that great teaching is there. Sri Ramakrishna says, if you have to make a thread pass through the eye of a needle, those when we stitch something, we take a needle and you take a thread and you have to make the thread pass through the eye of the needle. And even if a single string sticks out, that thread won't pass through the eye. Even a single string, you see. So all the strings have to be totally united, and then only that thread passes through the eye of the needle. This is the meaning of Mameva Smaran. Mameva, completely remembering that infinite, limitless reality alone and not giving space for anything else, anybody else. Uncompromising. If you give the slightest space for anything else, we are not going to succeed. Mameva Smaran. The principle is that Bhagavat Anusmaranam becomes the Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. Similarly, Samsara Vishaya Anusmaranam will become the Samsara Prapti Hetu. This is the principle which we should keep it in mind. Now, Krishna says, Antakalecha Mameva Smaran. Now, Muktva Kalevaram, giving up of the body. Now, this is another very important point. Yes, death is that event when this gross body is shed. That is one thing. But there is something called giving up of this gross body even when we are alive. Shankaracharya hints at that. Beautiful, amazing thing. There is something called giving up of this gross body even when we are alive. What do you mean by that? Shankaracharya says, what do you mean by giving up of this gross body? Yes, at the time of death, this body will naturally fall down. That is one event. But even when we are alive, now today, we are breathing in this body, we can be giving up of this body. We can give up this body. How? Shankaracharya says, when you give up the idea of me and mine with relation to this body, you have already given up this body. Once again, I repeat, aham mama buddhi. When we have given up this idea of me and mine with relation to this body, already you are above this body idea. With relation to this body, presently we all have this idea of me and mine. Is it not? Whenever I say I, the only thing which comes to my mind is we are deeply attached to our so-called this physical body identity. Okay, fine. But when we are talking about attainment of the supreme reality, you see these are the things which are all mutually connected. Krishna is saying, Mameva Smaran, and giving up of the body. When you are continuously remembering Ishvara and Ishvara alone, automatically you will be rising above the idea of me and mine with relation to this body. That is the meaning of giving up of the body even when we are alive. When we live this kind of a life, towards the end, in the last moment, automatically you will be continuously you will be leaving the body with God consciousness. So raising the mind above this so-called, this notion of me and mine. Now see, in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings you will find Ami Amar, is it not? Ami Mane, this body, and Amar, everything connected with this body. So rising above this me and mine, Aham and Mama, this is the meaning of giving up of this body. So that we have to do now itself. So when we are constantly living with the remembrance of the supreme reality, that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara, you have already risen above me and mine idea. And in this way, when you have become habituated to lead your life, towards the end, in the last moments, it will be an effortless so-called floating in Ishvara's consciousness and let the body fall down. So when a person leaves his body in this way, Krishna is saying, Yaprayati sa madbhavam yati. In this way, the person who leaves his gross body, he will be attaining to me and me alone. Na atra samshayaha. Nasti atra samshayaha. There is absolutely, please don't have any doubt about it. That is the certitude with which Krishna is talking here. Beautiful. So once again, let me just recapitulate the important point. This is a very, very important verse. Next 3-4 verses are extremely important as far as our day-to-day practice is concerned. Practice is what? Continuous, unbroken, devotional, habitual remembrance of the infinite, limitless reality called Ishvara, which becomes possible with the transformation of your vision that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara. And when you are living in this way, automatically you will be rising above the idea of me and mine with relation to this body. And when the jiva has lived in this way, in the final moments, it will be very sahaja, natural for that person to shed his gross body, and he will be attaining the supreme reality. Na asti atra samshayaha. There is absolutely no doubt about it. So beautiful. So this is the art of actually leaving this body in the final moment. So beautiful. So antakalechas mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yap prayati sa madbhavam yati na asti atra samshayaha. Please know, Arjuna, there is absolutely no doubt. When you continuously remember me in this way, by first knowing that there is existing nothing apart from Ishvara, you're already above the idea of me and mine with regard to this gross body. And in that way, when you have become habituated to lead your life, towards the end also, you will be able to very easily keep your mind on the supreme reality. There is absolutely no doubt. Now, next verse Krishna says, this rule does not apply in relation to me alone. What then? Now this rule that by keeping your mind on Ishvara, you attain Ishvara. We have seen the principle, the law. Law is what? Bhagavat anusmaranam is Bhagavat prapti hetu. This is the principle. But this is not only applicable with relation to Ishvara, it is applicable to samsara also. Just like Bhagavat anusmaranam becomes the Bhagavat prapti hetu, samsara vishaya anusmaran will become samsara prapti hetu. Remembering the things of the world, this person, that person, our deep attachment for this person and that person, that becomes the cause of our birth again in this samsara. You cannot escape it. It's an infallible law. It is an infallible law. There is no escape from it. So that's why we have to be very careful about what is the thing with which our mind is engrossed now. Is it engrossed with worldly things, this person, this object, that object? And it is difficult. And if it is saturated with Ishvara Drishti, then leaving the body with Ishvara consciousness becomes effortless. This is the point. So this rule does not apply in relation to me alone. Krishna says, Hey Arjun, this principle that Bhagavat Anusmaranam is Bhagavat Prapti Hetu, this is not only applicable to me alone, but this is applicable to the samsara also. If you are constantly remembering samsara or samsara vishaya, that will become the samsara Prapti Hetu. It will become the cause of the attainment of samsara. So that is what is being told in the next verse. So Krishna says here, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram tam tame vaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitah. Beautiful. You remember Ishvara, you attain Ishvara. You remember samsara, you attain samsara. That is the principle. So yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Smaran. Now everything is smaranam. Remembrance. And we have seen the principle of remembrance. It depends upon the kind of vision which we have. If you think Ishvara is one entity and Jagat is another entity, then there is a constant tug of war going on between Ishvara and the Jagat. But through Shastra Kripa and Guru Kripa, when we come to know that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara, whatever we are seeing in every form, Ishvara is getting reflected. Ishvara means what? Consciousness. Ishvara means nothing else. If you remember in the last class I had given that illustration of sun getting reflected in 50 parts. Similarly, Ishvara is that light of consciousness which is getting reflected in so many parts. And no one and no thing is existing separated from that light of consciousness. Now this vision should come. We should be able to see with this open eyes that everywhere it is one Ishvara which is shining in all these forms. When this vision comes, then the constant remembrance becomes sahaja. When you're dealing with others, this is what exactly Sri Ramakrishna was saying. These three verses are actually nothing but Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna puts it in his own way. He says, first tie the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth and then lead your life. What do you mean by tying this knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth? Tying the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth means what? That there is existing nothing but Ishvara. When your vision has changed, then you lead your life. Once when we have developed this vision that there is existing nothing but Ishvara, then you lead your life. Then that constant remembrance of that Parameshvara will be sahajam. It will be easy, and with that way you can easily leave your gross body and attain the supreme reality. So beautiful. We should always remember, all these teachings are the teachings of the Upanishads. Whether it is teachings of Ramakrishna, teachings of Krishna, teachings of Shankaracharya, I always say this, nothing like teachings of Ramakrishna and teachings of Shankaracharya and teachings of Krishna. It is all the teachings of the Upanishads. These all great masters, they are all coming and retelling what are the great principles and realities of the Upanishads. Upanishad is the main thing. These great masters, they are all just retellers. They come and retell the same reality and they demonstrate. They demonstrate this thing in their life. Is it not? What do you find demonstrated in Sri Ramakrishna's life? For Sri Ramakrishna, did anything exist apart from Ishvara? Ishvara alone existed. He is a demonstration. Now it is nothing about Sri Ramakrishna alone. All the great masters were like that. Krishna's life, Shankaracharya's life, they all knew nothing but one reality. That is the simple thing. So here Sri Krishna is saying that yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever you are engrossed with, you may be engrossed with things of the world. Your mind may be engrossed with this person, that person for which you have an attachment. A great problem. We are now touching upon a great problem. our attachment for this person and that person. And mind is naturally engrossed with those things. Or it may be not only this person, that person, even the different so-called lower deities, this God and that God, not the supreme reality. There you may find different people, they are so dedicated to this Shani Devata, this Devata, that Devata, because they want to get something out of it. You can see it. So all this engrossment with so-called different particular limited entities, when we are engrossed with them, the outcome of that will be that we will be attaining that very state. So yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram. You leave the body with whatever awareness of these so-called particular things. Tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. You will be attaining that very thing. Sada tad bhava bhavita. Beautiful term. Tad bhava. Tad bhava means engrossed. Tad bhava. You're engrossed with it. You're engrossed with it. It means what? Now that is the deciding factor. You can either be engrossed with some worldly things, this person, that person for which you have an attachment. If you are engrossed with that person due to attachment, you will be attaining this very world. So tadbhava means engrossment, engrossed with something. Now what is that something? That is what is the deciding factor. It can be the things of the world, or it can be the unlimited, infinite reality called Ishvara. So again, the central point is, what is our mind engrossed with? This we have to ask ourselves. Presently, this very moment, practically speaking, we have to ask this question: what is my mind engrossed with? Tadbhava. What is my mind engrossed with? If it is engrossed with the things of the world, we are going to be reborn again. We are going to be once again back into this plane. But if it is engrossed with the unlimited, with the limitless infinity, then we attain that. And how to be engrossed with the infinite limitless? That is what Krishna is showing us, by knowing that there is nothing existing separated from Ishvara. There is no second entity. This has to be driven, this has to be pushed deep into our hearts. There is no second entity existing apart from Ishvara. It is one light of consciousness which is getting reflected in every form. Please know this point. Whether the form is good or whether the form is bad, this good and bad, these are all human angles of seeing, human vision of good and bad. Whatever may be the form, in every form it is the light of Ishvara which is shining. This change of the vision is what is expected in your spiritual life. This is what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. You tie the knowledge of Advaita. There is no second entity existing apart from that supreme reality. First, be fully convinced. Try to practice it, that vision, in your day-to-day life, in your families, in your domestic setting, in your every dealing with the other person. Try to see Ishvara in that particular form. We are continuously negotiating and handling Ishvara and Ishvara alone, in good forms as well as in bad forms. First, this vision has to be brought about, and this comes only by Shastra Kripa and Guru Kripa. Again I repeat, this doesn't come from this book, that book. No, it comes only from Shastra Kripa and Guru Kripa, Upanishad Kripa. And when that kind of a vision is there, Advaita Gyan, Achale Bendhe, tie the knowledge of this Advaita vision and then lead your life. That is what exactly here Krishna is telling here. Beautiful. So yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tejantante kalevaram tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitah. So the question is, what is your engrossed with? If you are engrossed with worldly things, worldly human beings, this particular being, that particular being, we shall be once again born in this mortal world. But if your mind is engrossed with the supreme reality, you will be attaining that. This is the principle. Now, therefore, beautiful. It's like the conclusion. Krishna is saying, since the last thought is thus the cause of acquiring the next body, See, Punarjanma. Acquiring the next body. Today we are in this body. How many bodies we had in the past and how many more is waiting to come, we don't know. As long as we don't attain the supreme reality, the supreme vision, this cycle of birth and death, no one can escape. This breaking the cycle of birth and death is what is Khandana Bhava Bandhana. The Sri Ramakrishna actually stands for this great phenomenon of Khandana Bhava Bandhana, nothing else. Everything we are just cooking up stories. The essential thing of Sri Ramakrishna is what? This Upanishadic vision of bringing an end to this Bhava Bandhana. As I said in the beginning, the very term Krishna means that. Krish means to completely uproot this Bhava Bandhana. Completely put an end to our worldly. The very seeds of worldly existence have to be put to an end. That is the very meaning of the term Krishna. So beautiful. So Krishna's teachings are all meant for this great attainment, to put an end to this cycle of birth and death. So here Krishna says that since the last thought is thus the cause of acquiring the next body, our next body, what body we are going to get is completely depends upon the last thought. That being the case, therefore, so beautiful. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhi mame vaishyasya samshayah. As we have understood the principle, the law. What is the law? Bhagavat anusmaranam is Bhagavat prapti hetu. If this is the law, it's very clear. Constantly being angry. Bhagavat anusmaranam is so beautiful. I have seen. I have told this before. How smaranam? Sarvada, nairantiryena, adara, bhaktya. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. Sarveshu means sarvada, at all points of time, in an unbroken manner, with great earnestness and with a mind or antakaranam saturated with the spirit of devotion. Bhaktya. In this way, tasmat sarveshu kalesu mam anusmara. Remember me. Remember me at all points of time. Again, we have to go back to that very principle. How are you going to remember God at all points of time? Unless you change the vision. If you think this is world and God is a second entity, our mind is constantly flitting between the world and God. Is it not? If there is a second entity existing apart from Ishvara, a second entity called Jagat, then our mind will be jumping from Jagat to Ishvara. Sometimes we are in Jagat, sometimes we are in. But when the right vision comes, what is the right vision? Whatever we are saying, this is Ishvara's form. This has to be driven deep into our hearts. When that change comes, now constant remembrance becomes natural. When you talk to somebody, when you're dealing with somebody, you deal with this vision. Now, this is what Sri Ramakrishna was saying. Shiva bhave, Shiva jnane, jiva. Where is the jiva? It is Shiva. Where is the jiva? You prove it, you can't prove it. This is what the Upanishad says. I always say that. You dig into the human being, God emerges. Advaita. As long as we don't dig, we see only Advaita and all those, then Advaita means it's all a complex situation. And that is completely based upon avidya. It is okay in the beginning, we have to go through these stages. There is no problem in that. Now, as if we are Tattva Jigyasus, if we are the seekers of the supreme reality, then you have to probe into it. And when you probe into it, this vision comes out. If you dig into the human being, what is the human being? You will see that it is Ishvara's form. And if you dig into this thing called world, you will see that world disappears. It is Ishvara who emerges. It is Ishvara who is appearing both in the form of the world as well as Jiva. Again, I repeat, it is Ishvara who appears in the form of Jagat as well as Jiva. This is the immortal Immortal utterance of Shankaracharya. When he says, Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. Absolutely immortal. Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya. Where is the world? As long as you don't inquire into it, you will be talking about world. When you probe into it, where is the world? Jiva Brahmaiva Jagata Brahmaiva. There is no thing called Jagat and Jiva. It's all one Ishvara appearing in the form of Jagata and Jiva. This transformed vision has to become, this transformed vision is the basis of this continuous remembrance of Ishvara. When you have this transformed vision coming from the Shastras, now continuous, unbroken, Nairantaryena, Sarvada, at all points of time, in an unbroken manner, your remembrance of Ishvara becomes natural, is it not? When you are firmly rooted, when your Antakarana is saturated with the idea that there is no second entity called Jagat existing apart from Ishvara. So this is the whole spiritual practice, is not the question of just going to the temple and waving some light and all those things. That is all good. Swami Vivekananda says, that's all the kindergartens of religion. The real religion and spirituality is what? This transformation of the vision. Otherwise it is so illogical to think that God is there in the temple and outside the temple it is all world. Is it even logical to think that God is only located in a certain place called a temple or in a certain form, and outside of that it's all world? Is it even rational? If God is infinite, He is the only thing that should exist. There cannot be a second thing existing apart from Ishvara. This is what Upanishads hammer. This is what Shankaracharya keeps on hammering. How can there be a second entity apart from Ishvara? Reality can be only one. There cannot be two realities. So beautiful. So when our mind and our drishti becomes saturated with this vision, then the remembrance of that Ishvara becomes natural, sahajam. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara. This is how you can remember me sarveshu kaleshu. At every point of time. Sarvada nairantaryena. At all points of time and in an unbroken manner. Now there is no vicheda. Vicheda means no interruption. In this person's antakarana, there is no second entity possible to exist apart from Ishvara. So beautiful development it is. This is what Krishna was telling Arjuna. In this way, my dear Arjuna, constantly remember me. Okay, now, next point, very important point. Now, whenever we talk about remembering God, a very common response to this teaching, which comes from all of us, for remembering God, I will give up all my work. I will give up my work and I will go to Himalayas. I will go to Haridwar. I will go to Kashi. I will go to Uttarkashi to remember God. Means turning away from your day-to-day duties and running away to some other place to remember God. This is the biggest, I should say, self-deception. This doesn't happen this way. See, Krishna is telling something beautiful. Krishna is telling, you have to remember me at all points of time, continuously in an unbroken way, and what? Yudhyacha. So beautiful. Perform. Now here Krishna is telling Arjuna, fight. Why Arjuna is being asked to fight? Because he was a Kshatriya. And as a Kshatriya, his duty, a human being's duty, we all have our duties to play in our domestic setting. In our social setting, every human being, every man, every woman has got a duty, a role to play. Now there is an art of playing this role. That is the point here. How are we going to play this role? The art of playing this role is what Krishna is teaching here. How are you going to, there's no question of turning away from your duties and your role that you're supposed to play and run away somewhere to remember God. No, that is not the way. Shankaracharya says in his commentary, so beautiful. So, what is the way? Even while performing your duties in your domestic setting, You may be a husband, you may be a wife, you may be a parent, you may be a brother, you may be a sister, you may be a son, you may be a daughter, you may be a teacher, you may be a doctor. As a profession, you have your duty towards whom you are dealing with. In the midst of all these different kinds of role which human beings have to play, you have to constantly remember Ishvara. As I said, that constant remembrance of Ishvara completely stands on the transformation of the vision which comes from the Shastras. When you understand that there is no second entity apart from Ishvara existing. In this way, Yudhyacha, so beautiful, so practical. This is exactly, Sri Ramakrishna is echoing Sri Krishna here. When Sri Krishna is saying, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yudhyacha, Sri Ramakrishna is echoing these words when he says, tie the knowledge of Advaita and lead your life. Lead your life, don't run away from life. How are you going to lead your life? How are you going to do your duties? By tying the knowledge of Advaita, by being first fully convinced that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara. First become fully convinced that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara, and then play your role. Sri Ramakrishna's statement is just an echo of what Sri Krishna is saying here. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yudhyacha. Tie the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth and then lead your life. Lead your life. Yudhyacha. Perform your duties. There is no question of running away from our duties. This is a very, very important point. In this way, Krishna says, Mayarpita manobuddhi. In this way, that person's, now see, every term is important. So beautiful. Mana and buddhi. Kutra arpita. This mind and buddhi means antakarana is arpita, samarpita. It is completely, what should I say? It is soaked. Samarpana means what? You soak. As if you soak your cloth in the water. If you soak the dry cloth in the water, what happens? The water completely becomes wet, is it not? It's a beautiful thing to even imagine. Similarly, our antakarana has to be completely soaked, saturated. Where? In me. Krishna says me. Me refers to infinity, that limitless reality. Let your mind, antakaran, be fully engrossed or fully soaked, fully samarpita. Maya, mai arpita mano buddhi. What happens if your antakarana is like this? Mameva eshyasi asamshaya. Arjun, I have no doubt, if your mind is of this kind, you will be attaining me and me alone. So beautiful. In these three verses, Krishna, we will take up the next verse in the next class, as the time is now over, but the next verse is also very beautiful. Anyhow, just to wind up what we have discussed today. In these three verses which we have touched today, it is very, very significant. It is talking about our day-to-day life. What should be the basis of our activities of our day-to-day life? If we have to attain Ishvara, what should be the basis of our activities of our day-to-day life? That is the point. The question is whether we want to attain Ishvara or not. That we have to be clear first. If you don't want to attain Ishvara, then this is not meant for that person. You are free to engross your mind wherever you want. But if you are aspiring to attain Ishvara, then what should be the basis of your activities of your day-to-day life? The basis is what? Ishvara. Basis is what? Constant remembrance. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara. Anta kalecha mameva smaran. So the main thing is remembrance. Now, how is this remembrance possible? Unless you come to the point that there is nothing existing apart from Ishvara. So 8th chapter started with this vision that, hey Arjuna, Adhibhutam is Ishvara, Adhidaivam is Ishvara, Adhyatma is Ishvara, Karma is Ishvara, Yajna is Ishvara. There is nothing existing separated and distinct from Ishvara. This is an amazing drishti which emerges. In this way, you constantly remember that supreme reality, you will be attaining that supreme reality. Constant, unbroken, honest, devotional, habitual remembrance of the supreme reality. That is the secret. In this way, when we give up our body towards the end, you attain to that supreme reality. So if you go by that principle, Bhagavat Anusmaranam Bhagavat Prapti Hetu, we should also remember Samsara Vishaya Anusmaranam will become Samsara Prapti Hetu. So that's a caution. If you are remembering the things of the world, if you are attached to the things and human beings, no matter how sweet that relationship is, if your mind is engrossed in that, remember, you will miss the target. You will miss the target. There is no other way. It's an infallible principle and law. And that being the case, towards the end, Krishna is saying, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara. At all points of time, hey Arjuna, remember me. Remember me, and then what? Perform your duty. Yudhyaja. That's the most beautiful part of it. Tie the knowledge of Advaita to the corner of your cloth, and then do your duties. Then lead your life means what? Perform your duties. It is an echo. Sri Ramakrishna's this teaching is the echo of what Krishna is teaching here. Beautiful. In this way, a person's mana and buddhi, entire antakarana which is saturated with the supreme vision, that person will be attaining the supreme reality. Na atra samshayah, harbor no doubt about it. Krishna is emphasizing this point. Let us not have any doubt about it. This is indubitable conclusion. So beautiful. Next verse is so beautiful. Now this point will be further elaborated. Now in these three verses, actually, the principle has been told. Now in the next few verses, Krishna is going to further talk about exactly what we have to do while leaving the body. Amazing. There the practice of yoga comes. Yoga means how to raise your awareness from lower planes to the higher planes and consciously shed our gross body. That is what is going to come in the next few verses. Very interesting, very fascinating. The further details of what exactly we are supposed to do in those final moments. Leaving the body with full consciousness, not leaving unconsciously. 99.9999% of the human beings or jivas, they leave their body unconsciously. But leaving the body consciously. Conscious of what? Conscious of Parameshwara. This is a very, very rare phenomenon. So we are actually aspiring to get that. And if we have to get that, this is the principle. And the principle is what? Bhagavat Anusmaranam Bhagavat Prapti Hetu. Remembering, constant, habitual remembrance of Ishvara becomes the cause of attaining Ishvara. Let's stop here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.